cycle outside the ecosystem, okay, which is you don't get paid on a monthly basis. And there is a periodic side on this side of the equation. So you have to pay your salaries monthly, you have to pay your rent monthly. So I'm talking to those who are just starting off, okay, right now. So the challenge is actually to build a system which handles this periodicity and converts that to periodicity, okay. And that's a fascinating mathematical problem and an experiential problem as well, because we as salaried employees, most of us are salaried employees before we get into entrepreneurship. We do not know how to handle periodic money cycles. We know how to get paid on the first, we know how to spend it by the 30th, and we know how to get credits, but we don't know how to handle this amazing periodicity, because customers will not pay you on a monthly basis, especially in the product business. That's not how it works, right? So managing this equation, creating a system for doing that, is what an entrepreneur should be focusing, okay, right from day one. The other thing I have found out was, in this process was how much money you really need to start a company. And this problem is very unique to every organization. So when founders come together, I think the first question they have to ask is how much do they really have that they can burn before getting the next job. Okay. So, and if you don't have 12 months of money with you, and when I say that, I mean your lifestyle as well. So you've got to bring down your lifestyle to a point in which you can manage for 12 months. Okay, so I've seen entrepreneurs who want to start a company, but who have a home with an EMI of 65,000 rupees. So which means your monthly meter itself has to be around 90,000 rupees. If you're 4 of you, 4 lakh rupees, it is gele, right? So which means on a month, so you need about $100,000 to start, because your customers are not going to be there within the first 6 months, right? And that's where most of the entrepreneurial effort starts stopping. The daring, the courage to jump into an economic system where you need to manage your finances, what I call as the shoestring finances, okay? It has to be brought down to 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 rupees. You may have a lot of surplus. I'm not saying you should not have a lot of surplus. If you can raise $100,000 on day one, nothing like it. But that's not the case, okay? People are not going to sign a check on you on day one with $100,000, right? So managing that initial element of how much money do I need? Do I need to borrow from my friends, my family? Parents are out of question. They would not fund you anyway. Okay, what you have done throughout your life. So that part of making sure that you have enough cash, making sure that you have the initial buzz out there with your customers, okay, your potential customers, and the plan for first 6 months. Okay, extremely critical. We didn't do that well. I can tell this because we didn't do that. Okay.
So I'm trying to connect the dots.
Yeah, so now I'm saying that, shit, what should I have done, right? So then you are going home every month, your wife is at you, looking at you, what happened, right? So because she has to pay her bills every month, okay, if you're married. Otherwise you have to pay your own bills. But I think that element is extremely critical, to plan your cash for the first 6 months. And post that, when you have a running company of 5, 10 people, 20 people, or 20 customers, whatever the case may be, managing again that periodicity to periodicity is the critical part, and again we'll talk about it.
So I'll come back to a follow-up question on this, but before that, feel free to stop us anytime in between, because the intention here is to have a dialogue and have that conversation rather than we just discussing, right? So far, if you have any questions, feel free to raise hands at any given moment, and we can have that. So we don't want to leave the last 10-15 minutes for this question and answer. Feel free to raise your hands if you have any questions.
Yeah, so I'm very particular about it. I told you that I don't want this to be a monologue. Okay, so I would want to tell all my mistakes in the next half an hour. Okay, so you guys can ask me anything that you have in your mind. I will tell what my experience has been in that particular aspect. Okay, so feel free to raise your hand. Yes, thank you.
So the trigger to your transition.
Yeah.
It was more about a product idea, or as you said, it was more about changing the system, like research science to the business, like that. It was more onto product idea or that intent only.
Yeah, so we did start with the product idea. Okay, those were not the days when you would start with a product idea, because the ecosystem to fund product companies was not there at all. Okay, the angel ecosystem was not there, the VC ecosystem was not there. So we had to start off as a services company. Okay? Now, it was just about getting to know what business is. So I always say to entrepreneurs that first 2 years, just look at doing business. Don't look at what you're doing. Okay? Because you are not trained as businessmen. None of us are born in business families. None of us have done like been there and done that kind of stuff, right? We are learning. So first 2 years, do any business. Okay? It might be setting up, probably 20 medical shops. Doesn't matter. So it is not about the technology or the product or the service. It's about learning to do business, managing the cash flows. So I think those days were slightly different. Now it's slightly different. Okay? So if you have a product idea, you can actually bounce off, come to TiE President, have agents talking to you and different. But 2003 was different. So we started it like an R&D center. So I had 2 customers in Japan, 1 in the US, and the idea was to co-innovate with them. So our model was, if we co-innovate with them, that means we own the IP with them in that the first 2 to 3 years, then the possibility that one of those IPs could get commercialized was higher. So I didn't want to get into the usual services business, which I had seen. I had done it at Infosys. But I thought that unless we get into this R&D mode, we will not find the right opportunity. And believe me, we scrapped more than 25 different product ideas before hitting upon what we are doing now. It took us 6 to 7 years. I worked with Indian Defense very closely, and there was a moment where that switch had to happen. So when I met one of my investors, he said, Sanjay, nobody will fund R&D center. Okay? Again, this was 2006-07, so now it's slightly different again, right? So at that point, we had to choose and pick one of our own IPs and then shift the company to gear it around this particular product IP. But structurally, we were geared to do research, so we knew that one of the IPs itself would fund us. But we were doing services as well, which was R&D services, so it was not co-innovation every time. So 30% of my revenues was coming from product development, about 40% was coming from co-innovation, and about remaining 30% was coming from the IP that we had built. So it was about picking what we want, right? So I was talking about pivots, right? So another thing is this big use of the word pivot now, right? I am the pivot. I told my team, let's move around the opportunity. It's not about what you're doing, it's about looking at that opportunity, not being too, closed on to your thinking. You may not be doing what you're doing today in the next 5 to 10 years. It's very different. So you've got, the first thing we have to get rid of is, this is the only thing I'm going to do in the next, or this is the only way I'm going to do. Okay? So that flexibility and malleability, extremely critical, I would say. So we didn't start off with a product, but we always knew that we wanted to do a product. So that core goal was there. Changing ecosystem is a big word. Understanding the ecosystem and disrupting was definitely there. Okay, that mission was there. And Pune करायचं, especially this part, to do this in Pune, Silicon Valley, we can do it. Okay, the ecosystem is there.
Yeah. So you mentioned about you're a very strong proponent of in India for India. So are you working? You can be working in India but not for India.
Right.
Right. And tell me something about Uniken story. Are you in India for India? How's the business? Which geographies are you focused?
Right. So let me tell you a little bit about what we are doing now.
Okay.
So about 5 years ago, when we pivoted around one of the IPs, it was about creating a security product. So what we did was we kind of disrupted the identity technology. So we filed multiple patents on that. We got 3 of them granted, and we are actually creating what we call as connecting digitally safe. Okay. So we make connecting safe. That's what is our motto now. So the internet evolved in a certain way over the last 30-40 years. It was not meant to be used for secure applications like banking and stock trading. So we are actually disrupting the network stack. So we are creating a completely parallel networking technology, what we call as the secure private network, which creates a closed ecosystem where digital assets in this ecosystem are not visible to the world outside. Okay? Now, doing this, we couldn't have done this without the Indian Defense backing us at different points in time. Even today, we work with an organization called VESI. So if some of you are interested in any deep tech-based ideas, feel free to reach out to me. VESI is a R&D organization under the Ministry of Defense. They help and encourage a lot of next generation technologies. So the reason I said that was, if you want to be in deep tech, most deep tech concepts do have applications in defense, which means if you are aiming to move in that direction, okay, then focusing on the Indian defense will become